All right, so yeah, I have the honor to talk to you about what we're currently doing in terms of automation orchestration, which is kind of a big topic. So for us, it basically means we're kind of reorganizing the way we do automation orchestration within AMS-IX. We're currently working with an external company for that, YaWorks. And the whole purpose of it was to create an inventory and evaluation of what we currently have in our automation stack, with the end goal of building something that's a little more modern, robust, and flexible for the time to come. So why did we actually start this whole journey? Well, how did we actually get where we are? In 2001, when I started, we had one script, which was a shell script, which was 100 lines of bash code to generate include files for MRTG, and that was our whole automation system. So that's great, you know. It's a monoculture, everything works, and it's perfect. So between 2002 and 2025, we started to add some stuff in DNS. We started to add some stuff in XML. Started to put stuff in Postgres. We started to do fancy statistics, and well, you know, you've got XML, you've got Postgres, DNS. Why not put stuff in YAML as well? So that leaves us to 2026, where we now have 195 Git repositories on our internal Git host. 4,700 source files, and this was just a quick count. And I left out all the auto-generated JavaScript stuff, and about 940,000 lines of code. And this is managed by a team of, well, I would say 4 or 5 people, more or less. And that becomes a bit of a hassle to maintain. So it works most of the time, and it's nice to call back to what Marianne said. Some systems, you know, they're so old that there are now several generations of spiders in it. We've got e-spiders in those. So it works most of the time. Problem is, when it doesn't work, it's very hard to find out what is actually wrong. And it's usually very small things, but because we have so much code and there are so many, I would say, half documented integrations, it is very difficult to figure out what is actually what's actually broken here. Then we have some data model deficiencies as well, where abstractions bleed into different layers, and that's what you get when you develop something organically for 20 years. So what are we trying to do now? The A&O program was started last year with the goal of basically first having an architecture, what is service architecture. We basically top down say, well, what is it that we're actually trying to solve? What are we trying to achieve? Then create a high-level design with components. Low-level design, which is now currently in progress, where we really spec out, okay, what are we going to use for each component? And really, you know, plan a little better in what we're actually trying to build here. Then later on this year, we also want to define an MVP, because, you know, if you say we want to do this big thing, a forklift upgrade does not work. So what we have to do is make it bite-sized, small incremental improvements. So the idea is we start with an MVP where we say the most critical things to fix are these, and then we move on from there. So the goals and principles, I mean, I don't have to tell you, industry best practices, service modeling using customer service resource modeling, or sometimes also called product service resource modeling, which is more of a sort of top-down approach to defining what you're actually trying to sell, what you're actually trying to model. Components with clear responsibilities, everything with APIs, of course, and replace a lot of our home-built components where possible. Because, you know, when we built something in the past, it was like, well, there's nothing yet, or whatever is there is not good enough, so we have to build it ourselves. And if you have a team of 4 or 5 people, you know, the industry in the end moves faster than that. So a lot of what we have, there are better solutions for that. So in our high-level design phase, we kind of came up with a bunch of components or functions that you want your system to have. So there's obviously provisioning, which is the configuration of your devices. There's assurance, compliance, observability, orchestration, and intent data, which is the most, well, I would say a very critical component of what you want to configure is what you want to model correctly. Now you would think, if you look at this, when we started last year, we thought our provisioning was the biggest problem, because that's always where the errors seem to pop up. But actually, when we did our whole inventory, we found out that #1 problem was observability. So when something goes wrong, it's very hard to find out what exactly goes wrong. So observability is actually the first thing that we need to fix. Then orchestration and compliance, which is kind of your core to make sure that what you want to configure is indeed what is happening, everything is secure. Then storage of intent data, they sort of go together, but they are separate components. Then assurance. And provisioning actually last, because that's not the hardest problem to solve. That's, you connect to a device and you say, configure this. So in the end, what we thought was the most important thing to fix turns out to be probably the lowest priority on the whole list. That was an interesting conclusion to find. So this is kind of where are you on the technology map. We're currently in I would say a swamp situation. So there's a whole collection of scripts and tools. It's grown organically over time. There's very little governance over it. And the other end of the spectrum is, of course, a monoculture where you kind of, it's typically where you outsource everything to one vendor and you say, solve it for me. That's not where we want to be. That's also where we cannot be, because we are, if you're critical infrastructure, you do need to keep control over a number of things. So for us, the sweet spot is kind of in the orchard. So you have a core platform that is stable, and then on top of that, you can do your little extensions, or you can do some custom building where necessary. Interestingly enough, I would say this is a sliding scale of entropy. So the swamp is high entropy, monoculture is low entropy. And as I explained, in 2001, when I started, we had a monoculture that was one script. And over time, everything slides towards the swamp if you don't control it. So what are the next steps? Like I said, low-level design, we kind of started with that now. We'll be finishing that somewhere around Q3 with the technology selection as well. Then Q4, the idea is to do our MVP implementation. And then in Q1 2027, we won't have anything to do. And that's pretty much it. So.
I wish I had these guys on stage yesterday, right? For time. We have great to have you on stage. Shall we have a look if there are any questions?
Questions?
For me, it's even clear, and I don't know nothing.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, that's good. Then I've done my job.
You're a platform architect. Any questions for Steven at this stage? Maybe your biggest challenge. Actually, you're saying that you're done at some point, right, in life.
Yeah, that's no the joke of next year we have nothing to do is what our previous CTO used to say whenever we said, oh, but there's so much to do. He says, yeah, well, we do it this year, and then next year, it's going to be easy street.
Yeah,
it's never going to happen.
It's never going to happen. No.
But the idea is that if we finish this MVP by the end of this year, then we have a solid basis to kind of extend again. and to hopefully be less in sort of, I would say, emergency mode whenever something goes wrong.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then I have a question for you, because yesterday you were also in the room, right?
I was for a while, yes.
For a while. Well,
Yeah, yeah.
and we had a talk about, I would say, interdependencies, right? How we connect what we have here in Amsterdam with M6
Yeah.
to other parts in Europe, and that we are less dependent on other regions. How do you look at this more geographic, macroeconomic discussion by politicians, right?
Yeah.
In light of your role, how do you see that?
Well, my personal interest has always been how to make sure that you're not dependent on well, you're always dependent on outside influences,
Sure.
right? So
Sure.
you always have vendors, you always have you're dependent on the power company,
Sure.
for example. But I've always said, you know, we are somewhere at the bottom layer of internet connectivity. We have to be careful that we don't depend too much on higher layers of connectivity.
Okay.
So, for example, if you want to outsource it, we can host all our most of our infrastructure in a cloud provider. But then, to get to the cloud provider, you need connectivity, which is the thing that we provide. So, if our connectivity is broken, we cannot reach our own infrastructure, and that's kind of the thing. So, that's always a puzzle. Like, where do you
Balance.
where do you balance it, and what are your most critical components? And that's the stuff that you have to keep in-house.
Yeah.
So
Interesting choice, interesting role. All right. Any questions for Steven in this early morning on the 3rd? Yes, sir. Mike is coming up.
Yeah, thank you very much. I was wondering if you use formal verification techniques to also verify the correctness of your configs to catch potential misconfigurations or errors?
you mean, do we do it now, or do we plan to do it?
Maybe both. Maybe.
Do we do it now? No. No, there's no formal verification. So we do have verifications in place, but there's always corner cases for that. For what we want to do in the future, yes, that is definitely part. So that's part of the assurance and compliance as well. What we currently have, we don't store our intent state. So the intent state is sort of, I said, implied by what we have in our databases, but it's not very explicit. And the actual check whether your intent matches your actual state is, I would say, is flawed. It's not completely broken because we do have these verifications in place, but it's not covering everything. And that's definitely where we can make improvements. So that's certainly part of the puzzle where we say that's the assurance compliance bit that we want to fill in. Yeah.
Great question. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Another one for Steven before we head out to our latest speaker before a coffee break. Yes, sir. Here we go.
Steven, do you see any use of generative AI and agentic automations in your design?
At the moment, at the core that we're working on, not so much, but we do want to... so it's not a core component of the system that we're building, because we had this discussion, like where would we fit in an AI system, because we do want to have some infrastructure for that. I think that is something that we will see in the low-level design as a resource to use. So I think especially the observability component, it's very likely that we will employ some kind of AI in order to do, log analysis and troubleshooting. So that's definitely going to be a part of the design, but it's not like, oh, everything has to be AI based. So it's something that we will use as a resource. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Can I have a warm applause for Steven? Yes, thank you.